It's a great day to crochet. Today's yarn of the day is Ice Yarn's Wayuu. This is a 100% premium acrylic yarn. It comes in 100-gram skeins and is 350 meters long. This is categorized as a 2-weight yarn. My first impression of the Wayuu yarn when I took it out of the package is it's really very soft. It does have that premium acrylic feel to it, and since it's twisted very tightly, and you can see that there's a little flaw right there, but since it's twisted very tightly, it's not going to split on you, and it's just got a nice little bit of a sheen to it, and I really think I'm going to like using this yarn. So let's take a closer look at this yarn. If we take a closer look at the Wayuu yarn as compared to just a regular yarn, you'll notice that it is twisted the opposite way. So here's our regular yarn, and you can see that the twist runs this way. And if you look at the Wayuu yarn, the twist runs this way. So let's take a closer look at how this yarn is twisted. When I pulled this yarn apart, it had 2 of these strands, and then each one of these strands is 4 different fibers that's twisted. You can see it's twisted really tightly. And the thing about the Wayuu yarn is it's twisted the opposite way, and supposedly that makes it more user-friendly for those of us who crochet. I didn't really find it that much more user-friendly for me because I hold my crochet hook like a knife. Now, if you hold yours like a pencil, it probably will help you to grab the yarn a little bit easier. But if you have an opinion and you've used this Wayuu yarn, or you've used the ZZ Twist yarn, which is twisted the same way, leave me a comment and let me know your opinion and if it's easier for you to work with. Now let's take a look at a knitted sample. I didn't do that great of a job on this knitted sample, but I wanted you to see the texture of it in both a knitted sample and in a crochet sample. So you can see I've done a little bit of garter stitch down here at the bottom and done some stockinette stitch. And it does have a different texture than regular yarns because of the way it is twisted. Now let's take a look at the wraps per inch. I've carefully wrapped my yarn around this inch section, making sure not to wrap it too tightly and making sure not to line it up too closely. And I counted that it wrapped around 13 times. So if we take a look, that would categorize it in between a sport and a fingering, which is in between a 1 and a 2. But I think you could still categorize it as a 2. It's just a little bit thinner than a 2-weight yarn. Here's a close-up of my crocheted sample. So you can see that it really has a lot of texture to it. And it's because of the way that the yarn is twisted. So here's my sample that has been washed and dried. It pretty much looks exactly the same. You can tell that it did shrink up a little. There's the bottom, there's the top. So it's an acrylic yarn, and acrylic yarns shrink up just about, well, for this sample it shrunk up about 1/4 of an inch, maybe an 1/8 of an inch, but usually 1/4 of an inch is kind of the amount for my samples to shrink up. So you do have to take that into consideration when you're washing your garments or your blankets and things. So let's look at the drape of our washed sample. It really softened up and it is very drapey. It just swings. The one that has just been crocheted up, not quite so drapey, but I think once it's used, if it's a garment or a blanket or something, once it's used and the stitches are stretched and moved around, it'll be a little bit more drapey, but it is a very soft yarn. I think it would make a great garment. And because of the way it's twisted, it makes the yarn a little bit stretchy as you're using it. And if you are a tight crocheter, that'll work in your favor if you're making a garment and you want those stitches to be really tight together. Now I'm a loose crocheter, so you can see through my sample. After you wash it, it's a little bit better, but if you crochet tightly, then you're probably going to get a nice solid piece of fabric. So I always like to do a comparison with yarns that are similar or comparable to ice yarns, because a lot of us, we go to the store, we feel the yarn, if we like it, we buy it. But for ice yarns, you can't always feel of it. So that's why I like doing these reviews for everyone and compare with other yarns. So this is the Wayuu yarn, and then this is my shawl, We Fudge It shawl that I did for that challenge. And I don't have any of this yarn left over because I used it all, but I think we can still kind of have a comparison of the size of the yarn, and I can tell you about the feel of the yarn. So let me slip my hook in here under a stitch, and then we can get a close-up and we can compare the size of this yarn. So you can see that it is really close in size, but the ZZ Twist looks like, without me pulling it, it looks like it might be just a tad thicker, but not much. It is a very similar yarn. Now I will tell you this much, when I was working with the ZZ Twist yarn, it had a different feel to it than the Wayuu yarn, but after washing both of these samples, they feel very similar. They soften up a lot. The ZZ Twist, if you have the ZZ Twist yarn, or you've ever used it, or you've been interested in it, it holds up great and it softens up so nicely after you wash it. I was a little skeptical about making a garment with the ZZ Twist just by feeling of the yarn, but it is really nice after you wash it. Now, the Wayuu yarn feels really nice before you wash it, and it feels really nice after you wash it. So I would say, if you want to purchase either one of these yarns, ZZ Twist or Wayuu, I think you'll be happy with it. On the Ice Yarns website, the Wayuu yarn is $1.25 per skein, and it comes in a lot of great colors. And at the time of this recording, all of them are in stock. If you were to purchase just one package of this yarn, each skein would be about $3.74. If we add more packages, let's choose 3, that would reduce your cost to $3.08 per skein, and that includes shipping. I think that's a pretty good deal. Since the Wayuu yarn is twisted like the ZZ Twist yarn, I took a look at the Lion Brand website, and I noticed that they only have one color in stock. I'm not sure if this yarn is discontinued or if they're just in production of the next big batch. If you have any insight about the ZZ Twist yarn or the Wayuu yarn, please leave me a comment.